In the middle of the South Australian outback, where the horizon stretches endlessly and the heat presses down like a weight, a 4-year-old boy named Gus Lamont vanished without a trace. No one saw him leave. No one heard him cry. One moment he was there. The next, he was gone. What followed was a national outpouring of grief, disbelief, and confusion. But as time passed and the dust began to settle, one truth became impossible to ignore. The story of Gus Lamont was far more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. The property where Gus disappeared now sits eerily quiet. The sound of helicopter blades, search dogs, and emergency radios have faded into the desert air. The Defense Force, the SES, and even the indigenous trackers have withdrawn. What remains is silence, a silence heavy with unanswered questions. And standing in that silence is one person who refuses to give up. Josie Murray, Gus's grandparent, a transgender woman known to locals who say she transitioned years ago. She stands with arms crossed, her voice steady but strained, insisting, "We're still looking for him. You can't help. We are still dealing with this." Her words are brief, but they carry the weight of exhaustion, fear, and perhaps something unspoken. Behind those words lies a story that the public is only beginning to understand. It's a story about family, about the cracks that form quietly over time, about love that coexists with conflict, and about how those private struggles can explode into public tragedy. Because this isn't just a missing child case anymore. It's a portrait of what happens when pain, secrecy, and mistrust sit too long in silence. As investigators retrace every step, every phone call, and every conversation from that day, the picture becomes both clearer and more disturbing. The search began as a united effort, a whole community working together to find a missing boy. But as hours turned into days and days into weeks, a tension shifted. The public began to look inward, not at the outback, but at the family itself. Who was with Gus that day? What happened before he disappeared? And why are there so many conflicting versions of the same story? Neighbors recall seeing the family earlier that morning. Some described calm faces. Others mentioned tension. Police tried to map every movement, from the home to the property line to the moment when Gus was last seen. Yet somewhere along that timeline, something doesn't add up. The family's accounts, while emotional, left gaps. Not lies, perhaps, but gaps that leave room for doubt. And in the world of missing persons, doubt can be deadly. As the investigation deepens, reporters uncover fragments of the Lamont family's history. Fragments that paint a picture of a family wrestling with personal battles that go far beyond the search itself. There were disagreements about Gus's care, unspoken resentment, a distance that had grown slowly over time. People close to the family talk about clashes, emotional ones, not violent, that had built up long before Gus disappeared. Clashes between generations, between values, between expectations. And while none of that directly explains what happened, it raises a painful question that echoes through every tragedy like this. When families break apart, who protects the child caught in the middle? When Josie Murray spoke to the media, her message was both firm and distant. She thanked those who cared, but declined any offers of help. To some, it was a gesture as independence. To others, it felt like something deeper, a shield, maybe against judgment. But every refusal of help adds another layer of mystery. Why would a family close its doors when the world is trying to help? Is it pride, distrust, or the weight of guilt no one wants to name? In cases like these, the truth rarely hides in the wilderness. It hides in relationships, in what people choose not to say, in what they remember differently, in what they fear will come out if they speak too freely. And as investigators turn their attention back to the Lamont family, those quiet tensions begin to tell their own story. The grandparents have spoken out, the parents have stayed quieter, and extended relatives have offered fragments that never seem to fit together. Each new interview adds information, but also confusion. Each press conference raises more questions than answers. And while police continue to call it an active investigation, their tone has shifted from hope to uncertainty. Meanwhile, the community that once rallied now watches in uneasy silence. Online forums fill with speculation. People want to know more, but they also sense that this case is touching something fragile, something raw. Because this story isn't just about a missing boy. It's about the limits of what we're willing to see when pain happens close to home. When you hear the name Gus Lamont now, it's not just a news headline. It's a mirror reflecting the ways we fail to protect the most vulnerable. It's a reminder that tragedy doesn't begin with the moment someone disappears. It begins long before that, in the quiet spaces where attention fades, where help is offered but pride refuses it, where small conflicts grow until they consume everything around them. Investigators continue to analyze every piece of data, phone pings, vehicle movements, witness timelines. But as the evidence remains scarce, the emotional narrative grows louder. The grandparents are heartbroken, the parents are withdrawn, the authorities are cautious, and the public is left staring at a picture of a little boy whose face is now etched into the collective conscience of a country. People ask, where is Gus? But another question lingers underneath. How did we get here? How did a family, already fragile, end up in the middle of such an unimaginable storm? And how did the system, from social support to media, allow those cracks to deepen without stepping in sooner? Every tragedy reveals more about the world that allowed it to happen. The Lamont case has revealed a web of pain, identity, and silence that stretches beyond one family. It speaks to how complicated love can be, how personal histories and unhealed wounds can shape the way people respond to crisis. And it forces us to confront a truth we often ignore, that sometimes the most painful mysteries are not out there in the desert, but within the people left behind. For now, the official search may be paused, but the emotional search continues. The grandparents are still holding on to hope, the community still whispers, and investigators still review the smallest details, searching for something everyone else missed. Maybe the truth lies in a forgotten clue. Maybe it lies in the shifting stories. Or maybe it lies in the uncomfortable realization that this case isn't just about one child, but about what happens when a family's private pain becomes public. As the sun sets over the outback, the landscape returns to silence. A silence that holds more than emptiness. It holds memory, regret, and questions that no one has yet answered. Somewhere out there, a truth is waiting. Until then, the story of Gus Lamont remains one of the most haunting mysteries in recent Australian history. A reminder that even in a world full of technology, experts, and media, a single moment of loss can expose everything we'd rather keep hidden. Stay with us as we continue to follow this developing case and uncover what really happened in those quiet hours when a little boy disappeared and a family's secrets began to unravel.
The heat hung over the outback like a warning. Hours turned to days, and what began as a search soon became a reckoning. The Lamont family's car, stranded on the dirt track, was the only thing left untouched by time, but its stillness spoke louder than any witness. Investigators combed through every item inside. Nothing seemed out of place, yet something about the scene felt staged, too calm for what it represented. No footprints leading away, no signs of distress, no broken glass or forced entry, just silence, the kind that leaves you uneasy. One officer later described it as walking into a photograph. Everything was frozen. The snacks neatly packed, the windows half rolled down, a child's toy resting on the back seat. It wasn't what they found that bothered them, it was what they didn't. A timeline began to form. The Lamonts were last seen leaving a roadhouse just before noon. The mother, seen chatting with a store clerk. The father, paying for petrol. Witnesses said the atmosphere was normal, happy even. But by dusk, All contact had stopped. No pings from phones, no alerts, just nothing. When authorities arrived, they assumed mechanical failure or heat exhaustion, but the car wasn't broken. It had fuel, the air conditioning was functional. Everything on paper made sense, except the missing people. That's when theories began to fill the gaps that evidence couldn't. Some said they wandered off looking for help. Others whispered that something or someone had followed them. The police refused to speculate publicly, but behind closed doors, every possibility was on the table. As the search widened, drones scanned kilometers of dry terrain. Locals volunteered, some driving hours from nearby towns just to help. But hope was thinning fast. The desert, indifferent and endless, swallowed sound and sense alike. Then came the first major clue, a faint set of tire tracks branching off the main path, leading toward an area rarely traveled. They appeared several hours after the Lamont's last known stop. Investigators couldn't confirm if they belonged to the same vehicle, but the pattern was close enough to raise alarms. Was someone else there that day? Or had the family met someone on the road, someone they trusted? Each revelation brought more discomfort than relief. The more details surfaced, the clearer it became that something went wrong long before they disappeared. Missed warning signs, poor coordination, delays in the initial search. Every failure stacked like evidence in its own right. As news of the case spread, the public turned from sympathy to anger. How could a modern investigation lose track of a family so completely? How did a system built to protect let this happen under its nose? And yet, the silence from officials only grew louder. Press conferences gave the same lines: no new information, ongoing efforts, active investigation. But insiders knew more than they said. Documents leaked weeks later hinted at communication breakdowns between agencies, vital hours lost, leads ignored. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a reflection of something deeper, a failure in response, a loss of urgency, and the haunting question of whether this tragedy could have been prevented. The landscape became a metaphor for the investigation itself, vast, empty, and filled with traces of what once was. But then came an unexpected turn. A local farmer reported seeing lights late at night, miles from the search zone. Too distant to identify, too strange to ignore. When authorities finally reached the area, they uncovered something that changed the direction of the entire case. What they found there didn't answer everything, but it rewrote the timeline and forced investigators to ask a chilling new question. Were the Lamonts ever truly alone out there? Stay tuned. The next chapter reveals the evidence that shifted this investigation from a simple disappearance into something far more complicated and far more human. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next.